Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whichever part of the world you are. This webinar has been quite some time in coming, but I think we are at perhaps a nice juncture in the overall global markets. We are on Monday, 13th March 2023. A lot has happened. The Silicon Valley Bank has collapsed. There's been announcements by the US Fed on a sort of bailout rescue plan, and we have various other news, including some news that we will discuss in the webinar a little bit later. But why I mention that is that in spite of all these global events that have been unfolding, well, there is something quite interesting that's happening in the Gulf equity markets. And that's what the focus of this webinar is all about. Well, having said that, let's now jump in. And before we move there, just a quick comment on if there are any feedbacks, comments, opportunities for collaboration, anything, then we are most welcome to hear from you. You have the screen, on the screen, the contact information. Do get in touch, and it would be lovely to hear from anybody who would reach out. Right. So what you're looking at now is the Tadawul index of Saudi Arabia. And I want to quickly zoom in to what's happened in that index in the last, since, 28th Feb or 1st March, however you want to look at it. And we are on the 13th. So in about under 2 weeks, the index has risen a good 5.5%, 6%, right? Now, I want to very quickly bring up some of the global markets to highlight the contrast between what's happened here and the rest of the world. So looking at the S&P 500, well, I think the evidence is right in front of you, right? That since 1st of March or 3rd of March, we've seen this breakdown that has happened in the S&P 500 index. Effectively, it's come out of this uptrending channel, which it has been since October of 2022. The same thing basically for the NASDAQ index, right? It's also corrected, but not as much as the S&P. Definitely the Russell 2000 index, which is big index of the overall US stocks, that's corrected quite significantly, as you can see, especially in the last 5-6 days. This is the daily chart, remember that. And then you have some of the other global indices. Now DAX, for example, not really much of a fall, but it's been holding out. And in a separate global markets review, we've discussed various reasons why this is so, and we will do a follow-up review on that maybe today or tomorrow. The CAC also has held its head up. The UK index FTSE has corrected, right? Again, broken down from the multi-month uptrend line. You have the Nikkei, which has sort of corrected, but still keeping its head above water. And very interesting what's happening in the Nikkei, again, to be discussed in the global market review. And you have Shanghai, which is also sort of, on the sideways at best move. And in the face of all that, you have a very different picture on Tadawul, which is basically been trending down for the last, since Jan of or May of, May of, 2022. And then it's made a double bottom, a sort of, or not a sort of, almost a tweezers bottom between December 22 and March 23. And then we have this rise up by 5.5%. Like I said, in spite of globally weak cues, and right at the threshold of perhaps breaking out of this uptrend or rather downtrend line. And if it does so, then are we in, or can we say that perhaps the Tadawul index of Saudi Arabia has made maybe a mid to long term, at least a short to mid term base at a low of 9,970? And is there perhaps an uptrend in the making? It's very, very early days yet, but here's the significance. When you have a very clear move, which is for all practical purposes in the opposite direction of the global sentiment, there is definitely something that is going on in the Tadawul index, in the Saudi Arabian economy. And there's plenty of news as we dive in. You will see that, right? And at the same time, you have the Qatar index, right, which has sort of broken out and of its downtrend and is perhaps now looking to also start going up, right? With having said, and these are the basically, two large indices that have gone up in the Gulf area. Then you have the ADX, which is the Abu Dhabi index, which is coming down, but this is a relatively newer index. We'll talk about an older index in a little while, which is again in a sort of base formation, I would say, right? And it could be that it is trying to turn around to too early. And before that, the Dubai index had gone up about 5% in Jan, and holding its head there, but not having collapsed or fallen. Not collapsed is not the word, but not having fallen as much as the global equity markets have done, right? So you have the Tadawul potentially coming out of a downtrend. You have the Qatar index potentially coming out of a downtrend. And then you have the Dubai index, which is essentially been sideways and not been as adversely affected by the global trends as the global indices have. And all this is completely out of sync in a sense with the global cues. So the question that needs to be asked is like, is something cooking in the Gulf area which is underlying or underpinning these bullish moves? And is there a very clear shift, not only in sentiment, but somewhere in the fundamentals of what is happening there, right? Now, just to very quickly highlight a few news items that have come out just in the last few hours and 1 or 2 days, let me bring up just a few news items which one can connect various things to. And after analyzing that, we will proceed deeper into the analysis. Right. So three news items that I want to very quickly look at in order of increasing significance. One is just a announcement just in the last 24 hours that Saudi Arabia is launching a new national airline called Riyadh Air. This is going to be in addition to Saudia, which is already been there for decades. And this is going to be a completely new airline focusing on a different clientele. And well, it's definitely going to give some headaches now to Emirates, Etihad, and Qatar, right? And the amount of money that is being pumped into not just this, but several, literally hundreds of projects in Saudi Arabia by the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia and various other state organizations, state-funded organizations under the Saudi Vision 2030 plan is humongous and astounding. Most of us probably do not really have a deep enough appreciation of actually what is going on there because of the Saudi Vision 2030 program. And well, maybe we will have a session that separately discuss and get a awareness of the Saudi Vision 2030. But please don't wait for that. You must uh, research for yourself and just see how massive the capital spending and revenue generation, job creation, opportunities are in Saudi right now. So this is one of the things. The other thing I want to highlight is this news that UAE has decided to basically withdraw its objections or competition to hold the IMF World Bank meeting in 2026 in favor of Qatar. And this is significant because the Qatar government was basically a pariah, and now things have been on the mend. And actually, now there's very close cooperation that is happening between Saudi Arabia, between UAE and Qatar to support each other in various uh, ventures and collaborate. And this statement, I think, highlights it all. Sheikh Mohammed of UAE called up Qatar's president or the emir and said they wished the emir and the people of Qatar every success in hosting this global gathering. And Qatar has basically withdrawn its bid to host that session. So this thaw that is happening within the Gulf is going to put out a lot of what we call peace dividends and free up the tensions and be definitely healthy for business. Finally, and perhaps not perhaps, absolutely the most important and significant news of the last few days is that Iran and Saudi Arabia are now going to have peace. They're not going to be at each other's necks. They're going to open embassies in each other's countries, and there's going to be close cooperation. And this has all been mediated by China. And these secret talks were held in Beijing for about 5-6 days. And then this was announced, and this happened on 11th March. Now, this peace dividend that is going to come out of this rapprochement in the Middle East is very, very historic and very, very significant. There is no doubt that there's going to be a ratcheting down of tensions, of rhetoric, and this is definitely going to lead to uh, unprecedented opportunities on the economic side for those who can see it. China already sees it, and they have already gone in big, 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 both in Saudi Vision 2030 and in supporting Iran on various infrastructure projects and all that. So this is something which is not anything which is what less than transformative as far as the Middle East is concerned, right? So a lot of things are going to happen. Let's, track this space, and it's going to be really, really fascinating as to what is going to come out of it. Now, it is my belief, of course, nobody really knows what the absolute truths are. I think this line is really clear and stark, end of a dark era. It will be very interesting. United States obviously losing its preeminence that it once had. China definitely, wanting to put itself there right in the middle of things and be a negotiator, mediator, a peace broker, which US has not been able to do. And of course, US has had their own agendas. Everybody does, including China. And there's also agendas as to why Saudi Arabia and Iran are getting together after decades of very public and not public rivalry, right? Now, this, I believe, is essentially the fundamental driving reason behind the rise of the Tadawul index, right? I looked for um, stock market information on Iran, couldn't find anything, right? At least not publicly. So unfortunately, I think what we're seeing here is the Tadawul. Obviously, the powers in the know what is going to happen in the future, and they always act on information, privileged information, way ahead of it becomes public. So I'm suspecting, though of course I can't prove it, that at least some part of this rise in the Tadawul index when the rest of the world was going down is basically been driven by what's been happening in the back doors, which is now up front and center in the Saudi, China, Iran deal, right? And of course, underlying that is the multi-billion dollars that are being invested under the Saudi Vision 2030. And once this downtrend breaks out, the market breaks out, I think we could see some significant moves in the Tadawul market, basically the entire Saudi stock market, right? So on our side, we've actually been in the process of now gathering data for all the markets, major markets in the Middle East, and we are now running some reports and research on what we can expect as far as the Gulf markets are concerned, and we plan to have some very focused Gulf equity markets webinars in the coming weeks and months ahead. There's tremendous opportunity, I believe. Now, here is the other thing about tremendous opportunity as far as the Tadawul or the Saudi index is concerned. This is the monthly chart of the Tadawul index, and this is right from 1986. So this is a good almost 35, 40 years. And what you can see is that after the massive run up that it had, it peaked in 2006. We've seen the big crash which happened in 2008. Part of it crashed before that. So there's something definitely regional and local that made the market correct. And imagine what the correction was. It was from 20,000 to 4,500, 5,000. That's massive. That's a huge correction, right? To put it in an arithmetic, this is what earlier it was a log scale. This is a massive 75% correction that you saw, right? And the market ever since has come nowhere close to its life highs. Even now, as we speak, the Saudi Tadawul index is at 10,400, basically half of its lifetime, right? The other thing to note, again, the monthly chart, remember, is the significant top here of November 2007, then August 2014 at around the same level, and then here at September 21, in a sense, technically speaking, what we call a triple top, which has happened over, 2000, let's say 2008, or even if you want to go back, you can even include this 2006 to now, almost 20 years, right? So this has happened almost over a good, uh, 17 years, let's say, right? And after 17 years, or rather after 14 years, the market broke out of this resistance level at around 11,200, went up all the way to almost 14,000 and has corrected right now, right? And this breakout was associated with really, really significant volumes, as you can see. Remember, this is the monthly chart, right? So something definitely systemic and transformative happening, tremendous liquidity, tremendous buying, accumulation of stocks. This has been happening right from 2020. Remember that the Saudi Vision 20 draft plan was out in 2017. And the real sort of, big money and the news and all that started to happen a little late. And I think, of course, who were tracking it in the new picked it up and, bought the shares. And even if you bought it at around 7,000 or 8,000, you almost did 100% profit. And now, of course, that is down. But now that's all the history. But this correction that we are seeing right now presents an opportunity for definitely short-term traders and long-term investors to actually enter the Saudi equity markets in a very meaningful and significant manner, right? That's what the charts are very, very clearly telling us. Just to make things clear, here you have the weekly chart, right? It's the same thing, the weekly chart, and you're seeing this tweezers bottom name downtrend line that's been going on for quite some time. And the big question is whether this will break out. Note, this is all in the background of the rest of the global markets being weak. And if this breakout does happen and the rest of the global markets continue to be weak, this will be an even more significant breakout, right? So as far as I'm concerned, I'm just, waiting to see what's likely to happen. In my opinion, this is more a question of when will it break out, rather if it will break out. It may go down a little bit, maybe even back to, 9,900 or 10,000 levels for global reasons. But I think what's happening in the Saudi space is something to be extremely observant about. And those who can take advantage of this opportunity should take advantage of this opportunity, right? All right. So again, reiterating, all this is happening in the background of the global markets being quite weak. Now, having said that, we've got this news about the SVB bank being bailed out and various other news that have started to come. So it's quite possible that the US markets may stabilize and could, see a run up on the back of this backing by the Fed. Let's bring that up quick. Right. So here are a couple of things to keep in mind. The US Fed stepped in to provide funding, something called the Bank Term Funding Program, in which they are providing billions of dollars to essentially avert a contagion effect of SVB collapse. Right now, if this is not if this is actually happening, and this is the US Fed basically coming in to make sure that a financial crisis does not happen. The central banks and the central governments always end up doing this. There's really no big news about this anymore. And then here's the other news that came out, right? That the federal regulator, SEC, FDIC, etc., said that everybody get their money back as far as the SVB is concerned, right? So I'm highlighting this point here. Depositors will have access to all their money starting Monday, March 13th. No losses associated with the resolution of SVB bank will be borne by the taxpayer. But all the depositors are going to get their money back, right? Now, these two things should hopefully bring some relief to the markets, right? And there was some news about some stock futures, US stock futures having gone up. So, well, US is still sleeping right now. And in about 7 hours from now, we'll know how that goes. We'll see, interestingly, what's going to happen. And here's the other news that Abu Dhabi's Royal Group, which is basically a state-funded, state-sanctioned conglomerate, which is chaired by UAE's National Security Advisor, right? And obviously that means state money behind it and state power behind it, is looking out to buy the SVB Group UK's unit. So these are all, firefighting measures which are coming in to contain the SVB contagion, and on various WhatsApp groups that we are a part of. And by the way, in case you would like to join part of our discussion groups, do let us know. You know how to contact us. We'll add you to the discussion groups, and it's very focused, very current, and deals with practical, actionable outcomes that we can participate in, right? So all this happening, it's quite possible that the global markets could stabilize. And if that does happen, then I think, one of the things to look at definitely as we speak, you could see that the Shanghai index is already up 1%, right? And this is the market. And you have the Hong Kong index, which is up, it's coming up 1.5%, I think, most, right? There you have it. Yeah, 1.77%, right? And in a couple of about an hour and a half, Europe will open, and we'll see how the rest of the world goes. So here's the big news, right? The Dow futures have jumped 250 points as the regulators, which is the regulators in the US, have announced basically a backstop of SVB, and all depositors there will get their money back, right? The government steps in and says depositors with funds at SVB be able to access their money, right? So, yeah, this is what the markets are all about. And if the US markets are able to sustain this gap up opening, right? We'll know that in about 7 hours. Then I think that's going to be a big kicker for the Saudi markets and the Middle East markets. And I fully expect that then that the Tadawul index is likely to rise, right? So looking forward to some really exciting and interesting opportunities in the Tadawul and other Gulf markets in the coming days and weeks. It looks to me like from both a long-term and short-term perspectives, we are in a really, really, really sweet spot for smart investors to participate. And this could perhaps be one of the opportunities which create significant wealth for many, many months and probably years to come, right? I'm sticking my neck out here, but well, that's all what forecasting is about. You're sometimes right, you're sometimes wrong. As far as you're more right than wrong, and as far as you make more than you lose, then and you manage your risks, one should be fine, right? So we will do, I think, I mean, definitely this has gone on much longer than I expected. I wanted to do a sector-wise index analysis of the many holdings that are there in the US, sorry, in the Gulf space, right? We'll probably just save that for another webinar. Uh, Not sure when, maybe today itself, a little bit later. And if you're interested, do subscribe to the YouTube channel that you're probably watching this on, and or send us a quick, just post this on my phone number, and we'll add you to a broadcast list or a WhatsApp group in which you will get updates about the future webinars and other discussion, right? So I hope this session was interesting. I hope this was insightful, right? My focus, like I said, again, just to reiterate and close it, is the Tadawul space and also the Qatar space, right? Just to put that up, right? So there is the Qatar index also at a very interesting place. Not to mention, we haven't mentioned at all about much about Dubai and uh, Abu Dhabi, but let me just bring up uh, Abu Dhabi first. And same story, but not as strong as Tadawul, right? Tadawul is up here, all in the green, but Abu Dhabi is down, and so is the UAE. It's also a bit down. But having said that, I think both of these indices also, the Dubai and the Abu Dhabi indices, are at interesting places. If we look at it from a long-term perspective, the picture is definitely much clearer, right? Just putting up the long-term multi charts here for a better analysis. First of all, so you can see this is from 2006, big fall in the Dubai index from 8,200 to 3,000, nowhere close to where it was in its life high, and definitely an underperformer compared to where the Saudi market is. Right. Having said that, it's at a nice move. It's forming a flag type pattern in the uh, Dubai is definitely going to face the heat from Saudi Arabia, Tadawul, right? There's a lot of stuff that's happening, a lot of aggressive competition that's going on in the Middle East. Very interesting, very fascinating. And Dubai is definitely going to face the heat for that. And I suspect part of the underperformance for the Dubai and Abu Dhabi markets is because of the rise of and it was always a silent background power. It didn't make the show and jazz that Dubai did, but now under MBS, Saudi Arabia is like all guns blazing, quite literally, um, and this is perhaps the reason why the Dubai and Abu Dhabi indices are not doing as well as the uh, um, Saudi index, right? Now, I just have to eat my words a little bit. So this is the Abu Dhabi index. Actually, this is something I mentioned in one of the earlier webinars, that we don't have we have a history from 2002. So Dubai has done really badly, while Abu Dhabi has really done exceptionally well. And it's all happened very silently in the background, as it were. the move in Abu Dhabi, which is a much smaller market, by the way, in terms of the number of stocks listed, etc., versus Dubai. But whatever it is, for fundamental political reasons, Abu Dhabi has definitely outperformed Dubai by a long shot, right? Now, one can play it both ways. One can play into the weakness or one can play into the strength. Generally, it is recommended to play into the strength. And these are issues that we will discuss more in detail in the coming webinar, right? So Abu Dhabi index, I mean, all four, basically the Tadawul index, the Abu Dhabi index, and Dubai index and the Qatar index are all looking really, really at interesting places. So depending on how you want to play it, there are opportunities for, I think, everybody. Is the Qatar index, which is there. What we will do, like I said, is look at sectoral indices within this space and try to find which are the more specific, or shortlist what is even better than the broad market, right? But I will again reiterate this and close the session by reiterating that the opportunity as far as Tadawul, Saudi Arabia is concerned, I think is once in a lifetime. A triple top being broken out after a good almost 17, 18 years, giving you a correction, an opportunity to re-enter. And even, if you think about it, if it goes from 10,000 back to its life high of 20,000, that's a 100% return just on the main index. Now, imagine what individual sectors and stocks would do in in Tadawul in the coming months and years. And look at this rise. Just to let's go back. 2002 the index was at 2,300, and in 2006, 3 years later, the index is at 20,000. So from 2,300 to 20,000, almost a 17-fold increase in just 3 years. Now, okay, this is far this is far too fast, far too soon a rise, and that's why the correction that happens, one perhaps does not want something this big, but you know what, it could happen. And within the next 1 to 2, 3 years, could the Tadawul index be 100 to 300 to 400% higher than where it is right now? Fascinating times, interesting times. Keep in touch. And if anybody has any insights, any information, you are an analyst or you are in Saudi Arabia or in the Middle East, anywhere, we'd love to hear from you. We'd like to know what's happening on the ground. There's a certain intelligence in the crowd mind, which is impossible to get from doing analysis. So we really look forward to those inputs. You never know what opens out where. So we do invite collaborations, we do invite inputs. And if anybody is seeking to get in touch, please do. Love to hear from you. Thank you very much for being on this session. I know I've been rambling quite a bit, but I hope it was worth it. And I look forward to hearing from you and seeing you in the next session. All the very best. Like they say in the Chinese say, Mokarimaka, may you make a lot of money. That's the traditional greeting. And I think amazing opportunities. Like I said, I'm just going to keep parroting this. All right. So thank you. Goodbye. Looking forward to you in the next session.